came back into the market in a very big way.
What we know now is Wall Street can bring down Main Street.
People are seeing this, and those memories of fear are coming back.
When you have a 401k or a 403b, those kinds of accounts, they are incredibly susceptible to downturns.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped more than 900 points. More than 900 points.
There are questions about how to best save for retirement.
Part of the problem is confusion.
Time keeps on slipping into the future.
The first rule in investment is don't lose. And the second rule in investment is don't forget the first rule. And that's all the rules there are.
When the market goes up, you go up. When the market goes down, you don't go down. Save Money Radio, your money safe and sound.
Welcome to Safe Money Radio with your host, Brad Pistole. Brad is a retirement and income specialist, primarily serving Springfield, but he's sought after nationally for his expertise in helping people secure their retirements. Mr. Pistole is a licensed life insurance professional in the states of Missouri, Arkansas, and Kansas, and he specializes in working with people who are near retirement and those who have already retired with wealth management, income planning, and asset protection strategies.
Save Money Radio, your money safe and sound.
And now, here to talk with you about securing your retirement, your host, Brad Pistole.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again today on Safe Money Radio. You might be listening on the radio in your car, at your home. You might be listening to the podcast. You might be on YouTube. I'm not sure, but I always say this at the beginning of every show. If you're listening on the radio and you didn't even know there was a podcast, we've had a podcast for a little over a year now. It's crazy. We have like 75 people a week subscribing to the podcast. So go to YouTube and just type in Safe Money Radio with Brad Pistole. You're not going to want to miss today's show. Now, I know I say that a lot, but today is very unique. We have guests on the show with us today. We actually have two guests on the show. We've never done that before. And you know that in all the different types of financial planning that I talk about on Safe Money Radio, I'm always keyed in on one major thing more than anything else. Now, if you're someone that listens for a lot, you may think, oh, well, it's got to be about annuities. Nope, it's not about annuities. It's got to be about life insurance. Nope, it's not going to be about life insurance. Oh, it's got to be about guaranteed lifetime income. You know, those are all important things, and we talk about that all the time on this show. But last week, I recorded and aired a new show that's actually going to be hitting any day now, and the title of that show is what I'm talking about. The title of last week's show was The Number One Thing That Will Separate You from the Retirement of Your Dreams. My good friend Ed Slott, CPA, America's IRA expert, the guru when it comes to this, is the one who talks about this all the time. And what is the number one thing? Oh, it's market fluctuation. Nope, that's not it. It's about not having saved enough. No, that's not it either. It's about, and you can just keep on going down the list, no one ever guesses what the number one thing is correctly unless there's someone who listens to this show a lot. The number one thing that will separate you from the retirement of your dreams is taxes. Remember, it's not how much you make, it's how much you keep that counts. So before I take the whole show away, I'll tell you we are jam-packed today. So I want to welcome our guests, Paul and Mark. And tell you what, let's do. Paul, if you would, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll jump over to Mark and let him introduce himself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Brad, for having me on the call today, your show. I really appreciate it, the valuable time you gave us. A couple of things first. My name is Paul Morrison. I'm one of the co-founders with IRMAA Certified Planner. What it is basically a platform where we have an IRMAA designation for advisors, along with the software that not only the general public or advisors can actually see the impact of IRMAA will have on their Social Security. I learned more about IRMAA about a couple of years ago in December of 2021. It was an investment news article by Mary Beth Franklin, and it was certainly the topic caught my attention. I didn't know what it was at the time, and I Googled it that night, and then I actually called several advisors the next day to ask them, have you ever heard of IRMAA? What's your thoughts on this? What impact has this on your clients? And the interesting thing is nobody knew what it was.
Yeah.
Then that next week, I went to an advisor conference, and I would say 99% of the 200 advisors who were there had never even heard of it.
Right.
So I thought I was onto something here, and I saw that there was a large gap in the lack of education in the financial planning industry on the topic of IRMAA. So that kind of is what led me to somewhat have a passion about communicating, the risk of IRMAA, but the positive opportunities that we have to, educate those pre-retires and retirees from avoiding IRMAA or reducing IRMAA whether they're in retirement. So that's really truly how I came across the whole topic, and it's amazing to me now that I just how whether I'm in Lincoln, Nebraska, whether someone comes up and asks me, hey, are you the guy that is taught that understands IRMAA? I've got my situation, which is I always appreciate that, or whether I'm talking to advisors and they want to learn more about this risk because they obviously they have a couple clients that are getting IRMAA letters.
Fantastic. So I'll tell you what, before we jump over to Mark and have him introduce himself, I want to say this to all of our listeners. You just heard Paul say over and over and over again, IRMAA. And you're like, what's this IRMAA stuff he's talking? Is that a special jacket you wear? What is that? So we talk about it on the show all the time. IRMAA, income-related monthly adjustment amounts. And if you don't know what it is, then you need to pay special attention today, because I will tell you, from age 63 on, it's going to affect you for the rest of your retirement life, okay? And so we're going to get into it. Paul and Mark are going to talk about it. My good friend Heather Schreiber, Social Security expert from Atlanta, Georgia, is on the show a lot. She's always talking about Aunt Irma, and you don't want to tick off Aunt Irma. So Paul, with that being said and laid as a foundation, tell us a little bit about who you are. Or Mark, yeah. Paul, you just did. Let's introduce Mark. Mark, join us on the show. Thanks.
We can have Paul do it too if you'd like.
Yeah,
so
right.
My name is Mark Annese. I am also a co-founder of IRMAA Certified Planner. And Paul did talk a bit about how he got into this and what it really is. I started this about 10 years ago. And what ended up happening about 10 years ago is one of our other co-founders really put all these pieces together, different parts of the of Social Security Administration and Medicare, and really found out there was a lot of tripwires that no one knew about. However, these tripwires were, the costs were so low, it really didn't matter, and it really didn't hit people often. But back when we started talking about it, again, like 10 years ago, it was like trying to sell a fax machine in 1978, right? No one knew what it was, and no one really cared. Yeah. So now that we're kind of getting ahead a little bit more, and it's really starting to come out in terms of, seeing with people's Social Security and stuff like that, we rebooted a couple of years later, bringing in the certification. We built the first software that does the modeling of this, and we really rolled this whole platform together to really go in, educate advisors, educate the general public on how important this is, because a lot of people don't know this is coming down the track, right. And it really, really is important. And, we're going to go back to what you said about, your show being, that the tax show. Mm-hmm. And this is what this is, this is just another flavor, to quote Heather, it's, Aunt Irma's tax.
Yes.
And it's 4 different ways they do it.
Well, friends, if you're listening right now, we're gonna take just a quick break here in a minute, but I want to say this, and I always have to be real careful about my passion. I'm a very passionate person about a lot of things. If you ever come by my home, you'll see American flags flying in my home. Either of my farms, there are American flags flying on my properties. I love this country, but I will say this: our government can really mess things up, and I love our country. But you're going to find out, if you keep listening today, and you should, you're going to find out that the age-old saying, ignorance is bliss, is a complete bold-faced lie. Ignorance is not bliss, okay? Ignorance will lead to destruction. Ignorance will lead to paying tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars in unnecessary taxes. To say, oh, well, I don't need to know that stuff. Surely my advisor knows. You just heard 2 experts say the advisors don't know. The majority of the time they don't. And America's IRA expert, Ed Slott, will say this: I speak all over the country to all kinds of advisors and professional groups. 99% of the people that I talk to do not know what they do not know. Okay? So if you don't know something and it's going to impact your life in big ways, that is not bliss, okay? There's another saying, knowledge is power. That is also not correct. Knowledge is not power. Applied knowledge is power. You can sit around all day long and hear, hey, fast food's bad for you. You shouldn't eat it. And you're like, yeah, I know that. But guess what? If you drive through the fast food place and keep eating it and drinking it, that knowledge was no power to you. You didn't use it. Taking the knowledge that you learn and applying it and changing it is what changes things for you. So I want to say this. We're about to jump into a full show, an hour-long show on income-related monthly adjustment amounts, the IRMAA taxes, how it can impact you, how it will impact you, different things and decisions that you can make during your retirement when you have no idea a decision you made today is going to affect you tax-wise for many years on down the road. So you want to stay with us. And just know this, you can call anytime at 866-780-SAFE. That's 866-780-7233. You might hear what's going on today's show and say, hey, I need to call and go in and talk to someone and find out if I'm in danger of, setting off some IRMAA taxes. Or maybe I already have and I didn't know, and my financial professional didn't tell me anything about it, because most of them will say, as you know, hey, I'm not a tax guy. You need to go talk to your CPA. But they handle all your finances and then tell you they don't want to talk about any of it. So most people are fixed on the rate of return they can get you. They are not specialists when it comes to what we call decumulation, taking the money back out of the account and then all the taxes that it's going to create, federal, state, Social Security, IRMAA. We're going to talk about all that because those are the taxes that will separate you from the retirement of your dreams. So call us anytime, 866-780-7233, and we're going to jump right on into the next segment. So everyone, if you're just now joining us, today we have two special guests with us on the show, Paul Morrison and Mark Annese, and they are IRMAA specialists. So let's jump right in. Mark, why don't you give us your best definition of IRMAA? What in the world is this IRMAA stuff that people are talking about?
So by definition, IRMAA stands for Income-Related Monthly Adjustment Amount. So basically what it is, it's a means-tested surcharge on your Medicare premiums. So basically, depending on how much money you're making,
surcharge on my Medicare premium.
Yes, well, we could use the other word tax, but this one's a lot more palatable. So that surcharge is actually based on how much money you make, right? And there's 6 different brackets that they look at and how much money an individual has in retirement. And then they say, well, great, you're making a little bit more money, so we're going to take a little bit more out of that Social Security check for your IRMAA premiums and surcharges.
And I know we're not going to jump into this a lot today.
Add how.
Oh, yeah.
No, so I was just going to say the other thing we look at on how it actually is calculated, it's on your modified adjusted gross income. So it's not just willy-nilly on every single piece of asset you have. It is on your modified adjusted gross income. So apologize for that. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. So just making sure everyone that understands, based on your total, if you're married filing jointly, your modified adjusted gross income, it may or may not set off some special IRMAA surcharges. And I know we're not going to talk about it a lot, but I just want to throw some numbers out just so that people can understand. I've talked about this on the show with Heather Schreiber a lot. I talked about this last week. But these monthly premium amounts, they can range anywhere from $174.70 a month all the way up to as high as $594 a month. So I will say this. If you think it's no big deal, so I sold a piece of property or I took $100,000 out of my IRA, so what? I'm prepared to pay the taxes. Your mind's probably thinking you're prepared to pay the federal and the state taxes. Very seldom does anyone, less than 1% of people, know they're about to trigger IRMAA taxes and Social Security taxes. So your monthly premium for Medicare may jump from $174 all the way up to $594. That's a huge difference. So what, a $400 just lighting fire to $400 a month? It's a big deal. So we're gonna be talking a lot today about how to deal with that, how to keep from it. So Paul, let me jump over to you. Is there anything that you want to throw in as we're just kind of beginning, what IRMAA is, how it can affect someone, just what's your take on this IRMAA stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So, what's the ultimate goal of retirees, right? When pre-retires and they go into retirement, it's to maximize as much income as they can, right? They want to have as much income so they can live comfortably the next 30, 35 years. But what we're seeing right now is a lot of that is taxable income. So the more taxable income that you obviously desire or you want to generate is really the less amount of Social Security you're going to receive. Because, I always say that somebody asks me what I do for a living, they go, I specialize in IRMAA planning. I already know what their reaction is going to be. It's going to be, what are you talking about?
What's that?
And I say, if you make too much taxable income, going into retirement, I don't care if their age is 40, 50, 60, I talk to a range of people. But if you make too much taxable income going into retirement, not according to you, but according to the government, you run the risk of losing potentially 60 to 100% of your Social Security net benefit by the time you're in your mid-70s or 80s when you need it the most.
Can you back up just for a second and repeat that last line? I just want to, we talk so fast because we know this stuff inside and out. Say the 60 to 70% again, make sure people heard that.
Yeah, you run the risk of potentially losing, 60 to 100% of your Social Security net benefit by the time you're in your mid-70s or 80s.
So
that's the reality of this.
It's a big deal, and that's why I said earlier in the show, I love our country, I support our country, but the government's made it really tricky. And what do I mean by that? Well, because most people are not trained, even financial professionals, to know, oh, this one decision triggers this tax, and that tax triggered this tax, and that tax triggered that tax. And so when it gets to retirement income planning, it's what I've always called the all-seeing eye in the sky. It's watching every single financial decision you make, every move you make. If you sell a property, if you have rental incomes, if you take a distribution from a tax-deferred account, if you did it too soon, if it was before 59 and a half, all these rules that they've got, and they're like, gotcha. You pulled that out too soon? Gotcha. Or you took this distribution, that's going to affect this tax and that tax and this tax and that tax. And it's just a constant revolving door of you took out the money and you thought it was yours. But that's why I always say it's not what you make, it's what you get to keep. So if you take out $10,000, but you give $6,000 of it away, that's not a good deal. In retirement, we want to take out $10,000 and be able to use all $10,000. So this is what we're going to be specializing and talking about on the show today. I have two IRMAA experts with us. If you want more information about anything, you can call us anytime. A lot of you listening know I've written a best-selling book. I've written 2 best-selling books, but my newest book is Bulletproof, The Safe and Secure Retirement Income Plan. America's IRA expert Ed Slott wrote the foreword to the book, and in the book, this is what we focus on. It's how to remove the tax tumors from your retirement plan. And guess what some of the tax tumors are? Well, they're things that can affect and increase your IRMAA taxes. So if you want more information, you want a free copy of the book, you want to learn more about IRMAA taxation, call us anytime. We're going to have my phone number on the screen. We're going to have a special website for Paul and Mark on the screen. And so you can go to either location for more information. But our number is 866-780-7233, and you can call us anytime. Since I have to take a break, now would be a great time to call me for a complimentary copy of my best-selling book, Bulletproof, The Safe and Secure Retirement Income Plan. And I'll also give you a copy of my Safe Money Kit. My number is 866-780-SAFE. That's 866-780-7233. Isn't it time to stop exposing your retirement to market risk? You're listening to Safe Money Radio with Brad Pistole.
If you were born between 1946 and 1964, you are part of an unprecedented generation of 76 million Americans known as the baby boomers. Have you taken steps to secure your retirement future with options to limit the loss of your principal retirement funds from market risk while utilizing key tax advantages? Why not ease the burden of transfer of funds to your heirs and insulate your money from the shocks of an increasingly volatile world economy? Give yourself and your family peace of mind and certainty that your retirement funds may have the opportunity to accumulate without the risk of market loss. So call us now at 866-780-SAFE. That's 866-780-7233. It's time to start being safe. You're listening to Safe Money Radio with your host, Brad Pistole.
Welcome back. I'm Brad Pistole, your host of Safe Money Radio. I am a capital preservation and strategic income planning specialist working with clients right here in Springfield and Ozark, Missouri. Well, friends, if you're just now joining us, I have Paul and Mark on the show. They are IRMAA experts, income-related monthly adjustment amounts. We're talking about the taxes that will separate you from the retirement of your dreams during retirement. And so, Mark, let's jump over to you. I know yesterday we're having a conversation about the show, and you mentioned a story, and you can tell. I know you've got a lot of stories, but let's put skin on the bones. Let's put some flesh on this and say to our average listener who's maybe about to retire, or maybe they just retired, they're like, well, how does IRMAA, how would it ever affect me in my world? Let's talk about some specific ways that IRMAA can affect our listeners.
Yeah, so the first concept people need to know is their Medicare premiums and surcharges, they come directly out of that Social Security check. So your Part B is required, your Part D is optional. We always tell people make sure you take your Part D out of your Social Security benefit. If you forget to make a payment, they can drop you off that program and not let you back on. So it's just easier to have that. So as a basis, just knowing that those premiums come directly out of that Social Security benefit, you're now looking at a Social Security benefit that isn't what people thought it was going to be, right? So if you have a $1,000 Social Security benefit that you're expecting, and you have, say, $200 coming out of that Social Security benefit for Medicare and surcharge premiums, you're now living on a smaller benefit. And what ends up happening is over the course of years, as those Medicare premiums and surcharges grow, and they're growing at about 7.4% each year.
Wow.
You're probably going to get less and less of that Social Security benefit. Now, we have an example we use all the time. If you say you have a 50-year-old individual, male, going to be making about $3,200 a month for a Social Security benefit when they retire. If they have a $750,000 401k, they're going to hit IRMAA twice when they retire. What's going to end up happening is they're probably going to have to pay upwards around $900,000 between surcharges and premiums for Medicare. And that doesn't include going to the doctor, taking a pill, taking an ambulance ride. That's just your base surcharges and premiums. But what ends up happening is when that premium and surcharge increases, it can degrade that Social Security benefit down to zero. So what ends up happening is that Social Security benefit, which is a pillar of someone's retirement, that's now gone.
Yeah.
The next piece about that is they may actually have to pay that Medicare surcharge and premium out of their pocket. So now something they thought that was going to get paid by Social Security is no longer getting paid. They're paying it out of pocket. And the last piece about this, again, the taxes that we talk about, is you're still getting taxed on that Social Security benefit that you're not receiving, because that falls on your modified adjusted gross income before those deductions come out. So it really is kind of hitting people all over the place.
I hope everyone heard that. You could be paying taxes on a benefit that you're no longer receiving. Mind-blowing. So I love using this example. And in the show last week, when we talk about the number one thing that will separate you from the retirement of your dreams, which is taxes, I talk about two different people who are millionaires. One of them is a millionaire in their mind, and one of them really is. And here's the difference. One person has $1 million in a tax-deferred account. You just mentioned a $750,000 IRA or 401k. If you have $1 million in your 401k and that's your only money, because a lot of people do that, they pour everything into that, you're not a millionaire. And here's the reason why. When you start taking the money back out, you'll find out real quick. If you don't believe me, just go pull $500,000 out of your $1 million account and find out what happens. They're going to take 20% straight to the Fed immediately. Then you're going to pay the state. Then the feds are going to come back and say that 20% wasn't enough. We only took the mandatory withholding of the 20, but that threw you into the highest bracket, which was now 37. So give us 17% more. And then all the other eyes are going to be watching. So as you guys know, if you're above the age of 63, or if you're 65 and on Medicare, they're going to start going, oh, well, that's going to affect your Social Security. That's going to affect your IRMAA and all these other taxes. It's just going to spin everything off. So you will not be left with $1 million. The true millionaire is someone who has money in a 100% tax-free account, so that when they take the money out, it does not affect their magi or any other income formulas for taxation. So let me make sure our listeners understand one part of this. So when you were talking about all these surcharges and these premiums, and I know Paul mentioned this in the segment before, someone's Social Security benefit could get smaller and smaller or actually go to zero. How would that happen? Right. What causes that to happen?
So what causes that is, again, there's a couple things. The increase in someone's income over the life of their retirement. That could be through RMDs, different things like selling of properties and stuff like that. And we'll talk about that in a second. But as your income is increasing, you're traversing more and more of those IRMAA brackets, which means your costs go up. But your costs are also going up at 7.4% every single year. That's a historical number that we get from Social Security Administration and Medicare. So that's the numbers they're giving us, that these are increasing. So those numbers are just going to eat away at that Social Security benefit. And if you're in a bracket, it can actually, you'll lose your whole Social Security benefit once your Medicare costs overrun your Social Security net benefit.
Because they're taking the IRMAA tax from your Social Security check, correct?
Right. It's not a bill they send you. It's an expense they take from you.
So they just take it out. Okay. So think about this, friends. If you have a large 401k or IRA tax-deferred account, 403b, TSP, whatever it is, and you've been letting it defer and defer because you're like, hey, RMDs didn't start till 70 and a half, and then it went to 72, and now it's at 73, and anyone born after 1960, it's going to be after 75, and you're like, I'm just going to keep deferring those. Well, somewhere down the line, as that snowballs and gets bigger and bigger and bigger, remember, Uncle Sam's portion's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And he's going to say, you've now hit the required minimum distribution age, and here's the piece of the pie you have to take out. And when you do, remember, that's all taxable income. I have clients whose RMD is over $100,000 a year. 100,000. So think about it, because we're in our next segment, we're going to talk about people who married filing jointly make over 103,000 and what it does to them regarding IRMAA taxes. So stay with us on the show. We're talking about the kind of things that you need to be aware of, that you need to be educated about, so that you can prevent future tax burdens, and they're coming, especially if you inherit an IRA. You've got to liquidate that in 10 years, okay? There's all these different ways and things that can happen in life that can set off surcharges for IRMAA. So call us anytime at 866-780-7233 if you want free information or a free financial consultation. You can also go to the website on the bottom of the screen, and our number's there to call us anytime. So let's do this, Mark. Let's talk about, I know yesterday you talked about a couple of different examples of how people can hit IRMAA surcharges. Like there's a married couple example. There's talking about selling homes or having rental properties, and that's going to affect a lot of our listeners. So let's talk about some different examples of how IRMAA can impact you.
Yeah. So a lot of people, when they hear about this for the first time, they're like, well, you know what? That's only a rich person problem. You know, right. If you're making a ton of money, I don't have to worry about it. And there's, two sides to that. The first side is, people are rich for a reason. It's because they're watching all their pennies. And they're going to want to make sure, number one, that they're insulated against this. But it's also going to hit people that don't have a ton. So, we talked yesterday about, let's look at a couple that's making, call it $150,000 a year in retirement as a couple filing jointly. Okay. Now, that's under that $206,000 threshold, which means you're not getting an IRMAA surcharge. Now, what happens, though, when one of those spouses passes away? Now the surviving spouse is now making that $150,000 as a filing as single. So now they're up in the third or fourth income bracket for IRMAA, and they're automatically hitting IRMAA now. And that's not something people plan for, because they look at today. Well, what are they making today? And it's okay. But they're not looking down the road in terms of what happens with life. Now, right. If you take that, and you go down to every one of us, right? I live up in the Boston area, and the housing is absolutely ridiculous in terms of how much it costs. But that does two things. Number one, it costs a lot to purchase, but it also throws off a lot of money when you sell. So if you have, someone who's single, making under $103,000, and then they go and sell their home, if they have that capital gains, that could throw them right over that IRMAA bracket. Or if you have rental property, you don't get some of those deductions from rental property. You probably get some depreciation and stuff like that when you sell. But that too is going to throw you right over those IRMAA brackets. And when we're talking with estate attorneys, even divorce attorneys, things like that, you really need to take a look at how are you planning out what this estate, what this divorce, or what this retirement strategy looks like with things like death of a spouse, selling of an asset, selling of a business. You know, if you're looking at selling a business and you have a multi-year payout, how are you going to structure that multi-year payout to totally mitigate the amount of IRMAA you'd probably be hitting in your 60s and 70s?
That's so good. And Paul, I want to jump over to you a minute. I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot on this, but here's the thing. On the show that I recently did with Heather Schreiber, the entire show was key retirement planning ages you need to know. And it started at age 55. Then we went to age 59. Then we went to age 60, age 62, age 63, age 65, age 67, age 70 and a half, and then age 73. We go through all these ages. If you're just now listening, you've never heard that, just go to YouTube, type in Brad Pistole, Heather Schreiber, it'll pull that up. But we've also gone in and to help you out, make little shorts of just what age 60 means, what age 62 means. And one of the things that throws everyone is age 63. Even my colleagues who are in the business of financial planning are like, what's this about why age 63 matters? 63 doesn't trigger anything when it comes to financial planning. Paul, why is age 63 important when it comes to financial planning and IRMAA taxes?
It's a combination of things, actually. Number one is that 63 is kind of, a stepping stone in the next 2 years to enrolling in Medicare, deciding when you want to take your Social Security. But there's a couple, there's a couple professionals involved. One, you got the tax professional, and then you got the financial professional. So if they lack anything on IRMAA, and let's say 2 years later, that client or that retiree enrolls in Medicare and gets that IRMAA letter, they could have prevented this from age 63 when they actually would have, I want to say, planned accordingly from a tax sheltered or tax planning standpoint, knowing that there was going to be a 2-year income look back when they received that IRMAA 65. So I think it's very vital that 63 is, I agree with Heather Schreiber when she said that, it's a very crucial age, because that's a good time to say, okay, let's look at a Roth conversion. Let's look at some tax sheltered strategies right now to prevent getting that IRMAA letter, because it's going to come as a surprise when he enrolls in Medicare and gets that from the SSA. And then what happens is a domino effect, because he's going to first go to his advisor, then his tax professional, and we want to make sure that they have, they're up to speed on the education of IRMAA. And they could have, again, prevented this problem if they would have known IRMAA, at age 63.
Yeah, so, every single day, we have people calling in to the program, the podcast, whatever, referrals, that sort of thing. And I think we were talking about yesterday, the largest age demographic there is right now is in the pre-retire age. We may talk about that at the end of the show. People think it's people in their 60s and 70s. It's not. It's younger than that. So all these 59, 60, 61, 62-year-olds are calling in, and they can see the retirement right down the road. The light is there. They can see it, and they're trying to plan for it. But very few people realize your total income earned, taxable income at age 63, is going to be the first year that matters, because it's 2 years later that it's going to affect your IRMAA, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting. I've thought about this for a minute. When someone is working for a company, let's say in the next 20 to 30 years, most Americans get very comfortable in a tax-deferred lifestyle.
Yes.
A lot of their 401ks, IRAs, they're growing tax-deferred, so they're not really worrying about taxes. Right. But by the time they get to that age 63, and then they enroll in Medicare, that's when the tax world becomes, it just hits them.
Yes.
But it's just a tax-deferred world where they're very, very comfortable, so they don't think about these things.
Yeah. So I want to start right there in our next segment. So if you're listening right now, we have two special guests with us on the show, Paul and Mark, and we are talking about how taxes can separate you from the retirement of your dreams, and especially one specific one, the IRMAA tax, old Aunt IRMAA. If you want to learn more about this, if your advisor or your CPA has never talked to you about what IRMAA is, IRMAA, income-related monthly adjustment amounts, we are the experts that can tell you more about this. Call us anytime, 866-780-7233. Just ask for our free information. I'll give you a copy of my best-selling book, Bulletproof, and we'll do a free consultation with you to look at your specific situation. We'll be back right after this break. We go into our last two segments. So, friends, if you're just now listening, We're talking about income-related monthly adjustment amounts and how it could affect you in retirement. And we just talked about how your earned income from age 63 on for the rest of your life matters, because the IRMAA look back is 2 years. They're going to look at what you did 2 years prior. So here's why this is important. So many people are planning for retirement. They might be selling a home and downsizing. They might be selling a farm or a property. Who knows what? Or here's what happens a lot. They're inheriting income from their parents about that age, and they're trying to determine what to deal with that. They've got this 10-year payout because it's normally from a tax-deferred account. Everyone's got 401ks and IRAs. And what they don't realize is if they're above the age of 63, it's really going to impact their future, because their IRMAA surcharges and taxes are based on that. So, Paul, Mark, let's do this. I want to ask you this. How important are things like Roth conversions, maybe cash value life insurance, or building? I mean, I know some people say those are terrible, never do them. But why are so many people who have their PhDs, people like Dr. Wade Fowle, people like David Blanchett, people like Michael Finca, Alex Margia, specialist economists like Tom Hegna, why do all these people say you really should consider Roth accounts, Roth conversions, special things like cash value life insurance? Why is that important when it comes to retirement planning? What does that have to do with IRMAA and preventing IRMAA taxes down the road? Either one of you can take it.
The list of guys. Yeah, the list of guys that you just mentioned, we tip our hats to every one of them. They're extremely good in everything they do. And, we all have our own reasons why you want to use certain products, right? You use your Roth conversion for the tax implications. You use, life insurance for generational wealth and tax planning also. But, the traditional way of planning is really looking at those vehicles to get you out of taxes when you're in your retirement. But with the IRMAA kind of nail in the coffin here, it's, you really have to look at some of these vehicles, doing a Roth conversion from a 401k eventually into, a Roth. That money is going to be shielded from your modified adjusted gross income and really keep you out of, or hopefully mitigate those IRMAA issues. The same thing happens with a universal life or a cash value life. That money coming out of it is not seen and on your modified adjusted gross income. So again, it's tampering down the probability of you actually hitting those levels. And a lot of things we talk about here is people looking at annuities also. Obviously annuities for the most part will fall on your modified adjusted gross income, but we talked about losing your Social Security benefit. How are you going to fulfill that money that's now lost out of your Social Security? And you can do that with an annuity. But getting back to the first two, it really is planning to get that money into that non-taxable space where IRMAA doesn't see it. It doesn't fall in that modified adjusted gross income. And even specifically with your life insurance piece of it, a lot of people have some pushback like, well, if you do it this way, I won't have a death benefit. Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. But if you're doing planning, your planning is income, not possibly death benefit on that. And you can have, if you have the ability to have it, you have multiple vehicles to do that. Paul, I didn't know if there's anything you wanted to add into that.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
I'll give you an example. I'll give you my dad. He was a doctor in Omaha, Nebraska for 35 years, a great one. 14 years ago, he made the decision to do a full Roth conversion on a very comfortable retirement asset amount.
Yeah.
So here we are now. He retired in 2023. That was last year. So he was he lived a very stressful life. He was a doctor. He was constantly, performing surgeries. This is what I've noticed, Brad. I've noticed that now, since he's retired, his peace of mind is very level.
Yes.
He never has to worry about taxes. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have to put my mom in a very difficult tax situation. This is a real case right here.
Yes.
And he gets to do. He's still in the go-go stages, according the go-go, slow-go, no-go. It's from David Blanchett. That's a great line on retirement. But he gets to do the things he wants to do, and he never has to worry about a tax bill. That's what he said to me. He was very aware of IRMAA. So to my surprise, we had that talk. When you're in the medical field, you're aware of Medicare costs. He knows what's going on.
Yeah.
And he said it to me. I don't ever have to worry about increasing Medicare costs based on what I did 14 years ago.
That is so good in so many different ways. My parents, I love you. I love the fact that you shared that about your father. My parents, in their situation, my father was a financial advisor for 52 years. My mother knows little to nothing about money. Why would she have to? Her husband was a financial professional. But guess who died first? Dad did. And that's the current stats, right? I always say this when a couple comes in, I look at the man and say, my mama taught me not to pick on women, so I'm going to tell you, I always pick on us because I'm a man. You're going to die first, and she's going to live approximately 14.2 years longer than you. Do you have a plan for that? Because you're the one that's going to know where all the money is. Not always, but a lot of the times. You know where all the IRAs and TSPs and 401ks, and you know whether or not the pension passes on or not. She doesn't know. You're going to die first, and she's immediately going to go through that tragedy and then not know how to deal with any of it. And then in the example that Mark gave earlier where married couple together were under the IRMAA surcharge, but then when one dies, if all that money's coming in from tax deferred or pension, now they drop back to a single person, and that starts triggering all these taxes, which just gets worse and worse. So it's really, really important. And I'll throw this in, borrowed with permission, because I have a lot of doctors who are clients. Paul, since you said your dad was a doctor, do you know what MD stands for?
I'm gonna say medical doctor, but I could be wrong.
That's what most people think, but it's not. So here you can learn it and tell your dad. It stands for money dumb. Here's why. Doctors work long hours all day long every day, and they make lots of money, and guess what? They don't know what to do with it. They don't know about taxes. They don't know about any of that because what are they always doing? Caring for their patients all day long. So one of my doctors who's a client here in town, who's got their name on a great big giant building here in town, said, he taught me that. He said, I'll tell you why I'm here talking to you, Brad. You talk about things on your show that no one else talks about. I've read your books. And he goes, I'll tell you what MD stands for. It's money dumb. We don't know what to do with our money, and we have no clue what's coming down the road regarding all these taxes. Most of them just do what everyone told them. They dump all their money into their 401ks and their tax deferred accounts. And in our next segment, our last segment, I'm going to talk about why that is not the best thing for you. You don't need to do that. So friends, if you're listening right now, a lot of tax talk today. I am a retirement income certified professional. My number one goal is making sure you never run out of money before you run out of life, and that you get to use all of your money, not just some of it, all of it for your own purposes instead of sending it off to the government and every other place under the sun. If you want more information, call us at 866-780-7233. Ask for a free financial consultation. We'll be back for our last segment right after this. All right, friends. Now, I know if you're listening right now and if you stayed with us for the whole show, if you're watching the podcast, your head's probably spinning, and that's okay. Every single day, it seems like I learn something that I did not know, and it makes my head spin, and I do this every day. So I just want to throw out a scenario as we finish and having our guest on, Paul and Mark, with us, the specialist regarding IRMAA surtaxes and surcharges. I'm going to have them on the show multiple times. I already know the requests are going to be like, hey, let's get Paul and Mark back on again. I want to hear more about it, and we will. But I want to say this. This is one of the biggest problems in this country financially. It's one of the biggest lies that get told. And here's the thing. Do you know it's possible to tell a lie and not know it was a lie? Absolutely. You don't know what you don't know, right? So if you believe something to be true and you tell it to someone and it's not true, you just told a lie and you didn't know it was a lie, right? So here's the big lie. You turn 22, you just graduated from college, you get your first job, and everyone says, hey, have you signed up for the 401k yet? It's the greatest thing in the world. They're going to give you free money. And you're like, oh, well, they didn't teach me about that in junior high or high school or college because we don't teach money, anything about it. And you sign up just like everyone said. And you're telling everyone, man, this is great. They take out part of my check and put it in this plan, and then they give me free money. And dude, I'm making a fortune inside this thing. Until you find out later what that means. When you contribute to a tax deferred account, you did not save the tax. You deferred it. You flipped the coin and said, I'm taking my chances that taxes will be lower in the future than they are now. And I say this all the time. I disagree with a lot of people who say, Brad, taxes will go down in retirement. You're not going to be making as much income. You've quit your job. Yes, but if you saved all your money in a 401k or a tax deferred account, that is 100% taxable coming back out. So if you did that and your wife did that, okay, your spouse, and then you also have inherited income from an IRA from a parent or a pension or whatever, it's a massive, massive problem. And it's going to set off all these other taxes regarding Social Security and Medicare premiums and IRMAA taxes. So make sure that you think about every single penny you put into a tax deferred account. And that's why, I know this is a long introduction to our last segment, but that's why I own 8 life insurance policies. I've owned 10, but my father passed. I own policies on my dad. I own them on my mom. I own them on my children. I own them on myself. Why do I own so many? Nothing beats tax-free. So the death benefits are tax-free. I have different purposes for those accounts. Some of them are built cash value life insurance plans for me to take loans from them during retirement. And why do I take loans from a life insurance policy? I don't report it as income. It is 100% tax-free when taken correctly. It won't affect my Social Security taxation or my IRMAA taxation. I also own 7 annuities. Many of those annuities are Roth IRAs held inside those. And you heard Paul talk about it and Mark talk about the power of an annuity for income planning in retirement, especially if it's a Roth. Why? No taxes are due. So if you have a Roth held in an annuity, you have specialized types of life insurance, you can avoid a lot of these taxes. So as we go into this last segment, let me ask this. Mark, what advice would you have today for the pre-retirees or retirees who are listening? Let's start with the pre-retirees. Share with us, if you will. You mentioned yesterday what the biggest demographic of people is right now. What is that?
The biggest demographic right now is ages 55 to 64. It's not actually turning 65. And I actually read an interesting article from the CVS Pharmacy CEO, who's part of that demographic of 55 to 64. And it's a massive demographic right now that's coming. It's a big wave. It's very interesting. People get very surprised when I say that because they're assuming it's turning 65.
And there are this year, it's peak 65. There are 11,000 people turning 65 a day, but people don't realize that this is going to happen for the next, 18 years. That's why the biggest demographic is that 55 to 64-year-olds. The 65-year-olds are going to continue happening at record number because of the people in the decade behind them. So why is it important for people, especially if they're above the age of 60, to start thinking about IRMAA and future taxes and maybe Roth conversions and things like that? Why is it important?
I think it's very important for a couple of reasons. Number one is if you think about where we're at right now, we have some of the lowest federal tax brackets in 80 years right now. I think people realize that. The second thing I always say is that it's very, very vital to, as much as we all like rate of returns, I know the market has done what it's done, stock market, but it's very, very vital to make sure we become a student of the tax game. We really want to enjoy a very low bracket tax bracket lifestyle. And we want to make sure that we make the appropriate decisions by looking at the big picture, looking at our assets and saying, okay, do we want to pay the tax now or do we want to pay that big tax bill later?
Yeah.
That's the question of a question that, whether it's a husband or wife or an individual, you got to ask that questions. And there's tremendous research out there from Ed Slott, David Blanchett, Dr. Wade Fowle. That stuff it's free on the internet. You can read their white papers. I mean, these guys do numerous hours of research. They're some of my favorites, and the industry is very lucky to have them. Please read their stuff. It's great stuff.
So I just thought of something I've never thought about before on the show. So, Paul, I'm going to thank you for that. You triggered something deep in my brain that was buried way down there. I'm going to put Mark on the spot. Mark, what happens the day after Thanksgiving every single year in this country?
I sleep.
What's the day after?
A lot of time.
You do, but and I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but a lot of men do sleep the day after. But what do millions of people do the day after, early in the morning? What's it called? The day after Thanksgiving.
It's you have to put me in the
Black
spot
Friday.
Of it, but it's my all my friends. 12 o'clock, 12:01. Let's go out to Target. Let's go out to Best Buy, wherever we are, and sit in there and wait. And you're right.
And it's mass craziness every single year. Black Friday, it keeps backing up. Now it's actually on Thanksgiving Day. They start at 10 p.m. on Thanksgiving. It's nuts. But for decades, Black Friday, everyone goes insane. And every year, newscasts are going to have these special segments on people jumping over each other and getting into fights. Why? They wanted something on sale at a price they may never be able to get at again. And Paul just talked about it. Your taxes are on sale right now. After 2026, they may never come back to this again. If you don't believe me, just look up or email me. I'll send you the chart. The history of taxes in the United States of America from 1913 to now, 2024. We are in historically low tax brackets. Now, I know it's not exciting. It's not going to be a Black Friday event to go, ooh, I want to go pay taxes. But you better be thinking about it, because if you don't pay them now while they're on sale, it is a pay me now or pay me later program. And if you're taking tax deductions and deferring it to the future, you're going to pay. And remember, we're $34 trillion in debt. We may have passed 35 trillion while I was talking, because it grows by billions and billions of dollars every single day. And that is going to get passed down through Social Security taxation, through IRMAA taxation, through federal and state taxes, and every other way our government can figure out a way to tax us, it's going to happen. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us on the show. I know we're out of time. Mark, if you would, share with our listeners your website. I know you had something special you wanted to share on the show today. Throw that out to them as we close.
Yeah, so, for the people that are the financial professionals out there, if you want to learn more about what we're doing, you can go to www.IRMAA-certifiedplanner.com, and that's a designation that we teach for the financial professionals. For the end consumers out there, everybody listening who wants to learn more about this for themselves, they can go to www.healthcareretirementplanner.com, and from there they can run their own personalized free IRMAA report. So they can actually see, doing it themselves, hey, what might the impact of this be? And then from there, they can, talk to their financial professionals about it. But it's something that, through Brad, we wanted to make sure that everybody had the ability to do free.
That's fantastic, guys. Thank you so much. And we will put those websites in the description of the video. So if you've joined us today, we're grateful for you. Thank you so much. You can always call us anytime at 866-780-7233. That's 866-780-SAFE. Call us for a free financial consultation, copy of the book, or more information regarding IRMAA and all the stuff we talked about on the show. We will be glad to get that to you. Paul and Mark, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Thank you, Brad.
Brad, thank you very much for your time.
We'll have you back on again soon. Everyone have a great week. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you.
Well, I'm about out of time, and I would like to thank you for listening to Safe Money Radio. If you're serious about your financial future, give me a call, and together we'll get your retirement savings on the fast track to accumulation while reducing exposure to market losses. Thanks for listening, and until next time at the same time, I'm Brad Pistole, reminding you to stay safe so you can step into a secure future.
Safe Money Radio, your money safe and sound.
You've been listening to Safe Money Radio with your host, Brad Pistole. Find out how to contractually guarantee that your hard-earned money is safe while avoiding market loss so you can have the retirement that you deserve. Call Brad Pistole now for your complimentary Safe Money book and Safe Money information kit at 866-780-SAFE. That's 866-780-7233.
Safe Money Radio, your money safe and sound.
The preceding information does not represent tax, legal, or investment advice. Surrender charges apply to base contracts. Optional lifetime income benefit riders are used to calculate lifetime payments only and are not available for cash surrender or in a death benefit unless specified in the annuity contract. Fees may apply. Guarantees are based on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the insurance company. No information presented today should be acted upon without meeting with a qualified and licensed professional. Obviously, by calling us now, you are just taking the first step towards protecting your retirement. It's important that you read all insurance contract disclosures carefully before making a purchase decision. Rates and returns mentioned on this program are subject to change without notice.